I once read the book An Unbroken Chain by Henry Ortelt. I had the incredible opportunity back in 2003 to meet Henry and to talk to him and his daughter and learn a little bit more about his story. The premise of his book is that all of us live lives with a chain link. And his story is about how that chain, how each of the links in his chain helped him survive the Holocaust. And that if one chain link would have been weak, he would not have made it. And I love his story, number one, but I love this idea of reflecting on our own chain link. Taking a look at what we've experienced and what we've learned from those experiences and where it has set us up for success in life. I'm going to get very vulnerable with you today, and I'm going to share a little bit about my chain links and how in the last year I've really reflected on how I've gotten to where I am today because of some very important chains. Some of them were actions I took, but most of them were people who believed in me and people who pushed me and saw something in me and helped set me up for success. And I am excited to share the journey to creating impact to influence because of the love and support that I received from the people in my chain. I hope by the end of this episode, you are reflecting on your own chain, your own events, your own decisions, your own experiences. Some of you might be thinking to yourself, I don't know what my purpose is. But if you took a hard look at your chain links, I think you'd be able to find it. We're going to do a little investigating and we're going to do a lot of reflecting today. Let's get into it. Before I begin, I do want to put in a plug for Henry's book, An Unbroken Chain, Henry Ortelt. If you love stories about historical events, it is just really well written and a quick read, but very to the point of how these 18 events set him up to survive. And it is absolutely beautiful. Today, I want to share a little bit about my chain link. I know it's not complete yet, and I'm excited to continue to see how the links keep getting added. My goal today is not to talk about myself. My goal today is to help you reflect on specific people, experiences, events that have gotten you to where you are today. Sometimes we get to a point in our lives where we're feeling very lost and we're like, what am I even supposed to be doing? And I truly think if we took a time out and reflected on our skills and our experiences, there would be a single thread that shows you what the future could hold for you if you go all in on that thread. I hope you find this inspiring today to take action and really truly step into your passion and your purpose. I was telling someone this weekend that I sometimes cry when I get in the car after an event. So I do speaking, motivational and educational speaking. And sometimes I get to my car following the event. My smile is so big and tears will start to fall because I'll literally say to myself, you freaking did that. A lot of times my events go very well. I make deep connections with people and they uncover things that they've been struggling through and they go all in on an action and they feel confident in taking that action at work following the event. And that just fills me up. I feel this overwhelm of purpose, and just knowing that I'm so aligned with my passion and my purpose at the same time, it seriously brings out tears. There's a few people in my inner circle that get Marco Polo messages from me. If you don't know what Marco Polo is, it's an app where you can send video messages back and forth. And I will, the moment I get an email that just pumps me up, or I get signed for a gig that I'm really excited to do, or a new opportunity, I will call them crying. And I will say, "You're not going to believe this. I have to tell this to somebody. I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this." And almost always, the people that I share this with will say, "I knew this was going to happen someday. Like, remember 2 years ago, you were so excited for this to happen." So things are feeling really aligned. And you might be listening to that and be like, "Oh, Anne, that's not me. That's not me. I am not feeling passion or purpose." So use this podcast episode to reflect on that. And then let's take some action, and let's get you utilizing your passion and your purpose. I obviously worked with a lot of middle school and high school kids, and towards the end of my teaching career, I remember telling students, it's not about money. It's about what you do and feeling aligned with making money doing what you do. So to the person out there that's listening to this feeling unaligned, feeling stuck, feeling like this is how it's always going to be, I'm here to tell you that is not accurate. Step into your own. Figure out what you want to be doing. Start small if you need to, or go all in on you. We get one life, friends. I recently lost a very, very good friend. It hurts me to this day that I will not receive another text message or phone call from her. But she taught me so much about living to the fullest and getting together with people when you say you're going to get together, and connecting as much and as often as you can, and how that can truly change your life. So if you take nothing else away, take that. You get one life. Go live it. Some of you are going through some tough circumstances. There is a way to find joy in every single day, but it's a choice. It's a choice. All right, let's get into some of my chain links so that you can start seeing yours more clearly. Where do you even start when you take a look at your life and some of the chain links and how they link up? I'm going to start with some of my most recent memories that I recognize now that hold true to my passions. So I'm going to start with kindergarten. And I'm so sorry to whoever taught me preschool. I don't remember preschool, but I'm sure you had an impact on me as well. Kindergarten, I had Mrs. Kuhlman, and I adored this woman. I loved how she spoke to us and filled me up, and I just became this very confident individual because of Mrs. Kuhlman. She also set my heart on fire to be a teacher and work with other children as well. I've got to tell you that my next few teachers just reiterated that belief that I wanted to be in education. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Homan, my second grade teacher, Mrs. Coleman, my third grade teacher, Mrs. Gerlach, Mrs. Funson in fourth grade, Mrs. Kuhlman, in fifth grade. I got to keep going. Mrs. Lund in sixth grade. I'll stop there. All just kept showing me and building me up that education was in my blood. All of these women were such incredible role models for me. And not only did I want to be them because of who they were as people, but I knew I had the skills to be a teacher because these women said things like that to me. They made statements in conferences about my leadership skills, about my speaking skills, about my storytelling skills. and also my academic skills. And they really nurtured this belief in myself that I have value and that I could go impact and influence other people in my future. So I'm going to start with those chains. Now, I did not start with my parents because I don't have a lot of memories pre-kindergarten. So I will tell you that throughout my schooling years, my parents also showed me that they believed in me, that they were proud of me, and they were part of my chain, also all the way through my education, my early education. And so they really set me up in that way. In my presentations, I talk a lot about my dad, and I think it's because my dad was home from work around the same time that I was home from school. And so I got to see him in a way that really modeled to me what it meant to be a leader in the home. And my dad was someone, this has kind of put a damper on my marriage because my dad came home every day at 3:30 and he did the dishes. He had laundry going while he was doing the dishes. He made supper and then folded the laundry that he started before doing the dishes. And he really was kind of the homemaker between 3:30 and 5:30. Because he was home, he went to work very early and then he was home early and did a lot of those things Monday through Friday. And I got to hear his stories about work, and I got to hear him say things to me that really set me up with my confidence and how I approach things. And, he was such a role model in that way of talking to me after school and really setting me up to believe in myself. And if I ever was upset about something, he was there to listen. I don't remember much advice necessarily coming from him, but man, he would just listen to what I was saying, what I was experiencing. I kind of just needed him to do that because I am a verbal processor. And I think he recognized that about me, that I would come around to the answer to my question eventually through being able to kind of spew it all out. And so during my middle school and high school years, he really was someone who built up my confidence in myself and my abilities. Now, let me tell you about a few things that I can recognize in my chain through middle school and high school. I always ran for student council, and I loved organizing organizations and organizing people and events and planning. That was my jam. And so you could see me in 7th grade student council. 8th grade, I was the president of the student council that year. 9th grade through 12th grade, I was also in student council, and just always learning and leading. One of my incredible moments, if I had to string my experiences together, not my people and my experiences and my skills, if all I had to do was put my experiences on my chain link, going to Camp Chile in Colorado would be on there for sure. It was a 4-day, maybe 5-day leadership camp in the mountains. There were 3 of us from my high school that got to go, got on a plane for the first time without my parents, for the first time in general, and then without my parents on top of that, flew to Colorado, got picked up by camp counselors, and had this incredible leadership experience, really recognized things I was not doing well in leadership, and made a plan to get better at leadership. I think there was a time, there's been multiple times in my life where I've acted like a know-it-all, and it did not serve me well, but it did help me learn to know what I don't want to be in the end. And so some of you may be listening to this who knew me at different parts in my life where I really did come off like I knew everything and that I knew the right way to do it. And I was stubborn. And it's definitely like seasons within my life where I can recognize that I was acting in that way. And at camp, I recognized my shortfalls, no pun intended if you know me. And I got to learn and grow, but I also got to meet people from all over the United States, 2 of which I am still connected to online. Like we still celebrate each other online from camp when I was 15 years old. That's wild. That's 25 years. That's wild. I've never really thought about that until I just said it now. That camp allowed me to really sharpen my leadership skills and reflect on what I wanted as a leader. That was my sophomore year going into my junior year. In high school, I also was a cheerleading captain, and the dance, we had a dance event. We put on a dance show every year, and I was a leader within that. So there were lots of opportunities, and I took those opportunities to step into leadership. So that is a thread that you can see throughout literally 5-year-old Anne, all the way through now, really wanting and learning and growing in leadership. From high school, you know what I should talk about? One individual in general in high school her name now is Heather Mueller. Back then, she was Heather Lott, and she was my 9th grade history teacher. She truly was an inspiration for me to switch my mindset of how I wanted to, or what area of education I wanted to go into. I thought I was going to be an English teacher. Kind of forever. I think in elementary, I wanted to be an elementary teacher because that's all I had known. The second I got into middle school, I knew language arts, English was for me. And I really believed that. 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, it started to shift. That's because in 9th grade and 10th grade, you start getting into more novels and literature and big ideas. And that was not for me. I was like, let me fix everybody's grammar. Let me be the capitalization police. I was really good at the writing piece, but not so much the analysis of literature works. That was not my strong suit. What I loved, though, about English was the storytelling. And so from that storytelling, liking storytelling, came a natural connection to history, because history is a series of stories. So when I had this history teacher, Miss Lott, and she was very young when she started, but she just told stories in a way. I remember going through an African American unit and talking about slavery through stories, not through the textbook. And I was just enraptured in learning about the people in history, not so much the events, but the people and their stories. And it really started to shift in 10th grade when I had Mr. Eyrig. He was also a great storyteller, and he brought in the cause and the effect. And that just pulled me right in. And that's when I knew I needed to shift to being a social studies teacher versus an English teacher. And I think I really recognized that in 10th grade. From there, so now I have a new vision for my future. I go to college, and at orientation, I meet Clark Johnson. Clark Johnson was the social studies department head, I believe, that year. And he happened to be my orientation leader. So we're walking around campus, and he's asking everybody, what are you going to major in? What are you thinking? And I tell him that I'm going into social studies education. And he says, ooh, stop in my office in August, and I will help you set up your schedule, your class schedule for the next 4 years. Do you want to be here for 4 years or 5 years? And I said, oh my gosh, if I could get out in 4 years, that would be better for my bank account. That would be better for me. And he says, all right, you come in in August, and I will set your schedule. I will pre-approve you for some classes. and help you set your schedule so that you can get in and out in 4 years and really, have that organized for you. Friends, can you imagine having an adult meet you and within 1 hour say, I am going to help you and I'm going to set you up for so much success? It was wild. Now, I think all of us have had an opportunity like this that we didn't take. We said, oh yeah, I'll go stop in your office, and we didn't do it. Well, dang it. That's an experience right there that I committed to. I went into his office. It might not have been August. It might have been the first few weeks of September. And I said, do you remember me? And he said, yes, I do. And he helped me build that schedule. He allowed me to come into his office a couple years later to pre-approve me for things so that I could make sure I organized my schedule in a way that I was going to be able to do my student teaching my 4th year spring semester. It was amazing. He had so much belief in me. He also taught me, he had me for a couple of classes, and he really inspired me to be a social studies teacher that tells stories and asks kids or students for their perspective after hearing that story. I think I would have gone in as a history teacher and said, here's what happened, and here's the perspective you should believe based on that story I just told you. And he really opened my eyes up to everybody hears stories a little differently. And so ask them, what did you get out of that story? What do you feel for that person? What are you thinking about after you hear this? And that, really changed how I taught, got me excited to teach, and really build up my belief that I could be an influential social studies teacher and really make a change. I told my students every year, the reason I teach social studies is there was a time when I thought history was boring. And I'm going to help you realize it is not. And so I'm going to help you throughout this year to become a storyteller, someone who soaks up stories and thinks through history through your own eyes. And I think I was able to do that pretty well based on the stories that came back to me from a lot of my former students. This also sets me up in college. I had a professor my last year. Now, Clark set me up for success, got my schedule set up perfectly. But friends, I had one failure that put a kink in my schedule. And this is a funny one. Be prepared. I failed. I think I got a D in Introduction to Music History. We had the most explosive, exciting music teacher, Dr. Aloisio. If you are from the Minnesota State University Mankato alumni, you know Aloisio. He was so great. But that semester, I was so overwhelmed that class, because it was so fun, kind of fell off my radar to study for it. And I got a D, and I had to retake that class, which meant I couldn't get into a history class that I needed at that same time. Now, here's where I go. That is divine intervention, friends, because I would have never taken the class. So sorry to the professor I'm about to name, who I know well. I'm so sorry that I was not going to take your class if I was not forced to take your class. So here it is, my senior year. I'm set up to do my student teaching, but I am one 400 level history class short to graduate in May. Oh, I was so upset. And I went into Clark's office and I said, I'm one history class short. What is there that I can take while I student teach? Because when you're student teaching, you have to teach Monday through Friday. I student taught 55 minutes away. And so I couldn't take a class between the hours of 6:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. And he says, you've got to take this history of Renaissance and Reformation, a European history class with Dr. Chris Corley. Now, some of you know this name because some of you who know me know that I went to camp, which I'll get to in a second, and that Corley rings a bell. because that is how I got connected to a camp in New Hampshire, was through Chris Corley's History of Renaissance and Reformation, European History. So this class was from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock on Wednesdays. That's right, friends, a 4-hour class on European history. Now, I love European history, but I like it for a few reasons not related to the Renaissance. And so this was not a class I was excited to take. But let me tell you, had I not taken this class, I know that my life would be so different. This class not only was fun, Chris was just a dynamic teacher, and he really made us learn the material through his lectures, but we learned the most by the activities he made us do related to the material. It was very hands-on, lots of group work, lots of reflection, which was great. That's how I really ran my classes as a upper level high school teacher, because of what I learned in Chris's class. But that's not what changed the trajectory of my life. It was graduation day. Here I am, walking with my cap and gown, going to get my diploma. I walk off the stage, and Chris was one of the professors that represented the social studies or history department that year. They rotate that person. And Chris pulls me aside as I'm walking back to my chair. Picture this huge, we did it in the arena, like the basketball arena. And I'm walking back to my chair, little me, right? And Chris Corley jumps out, says, "Do you have a job yet? Do you have a teaching job yet?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, "I don't know, trying to find a job." And he says, "Call me on Monday. Have a good weekend. Congratulations, and call me on Monday." Once again, here's an open opportunity. And I took it. I called Chris on Monday and I said, "What's up?" And he said, "You need to meet my wife. She has an incredible opportunity for you at a summer camp in New Hampshire. And I really think you'd be a great fit." So I think it was that week I met with his wife, Jolly Corley, who you will find is another person in my chain. And I get the job to go work at a summer camp out in New Hampshire, Meredith, New Hampshire, Moultonboro, New Hampshire. And it's an all summer camp. Like, these kids show up the third week of June and they don't leave until after the first week of August. Same kids, overnight camp. It was a wild opportunity that I would never have in Minnesota. Also, way outside my comfort zone. I didn't know anyone else working at camp. It was just going to be me on a flight out to New Hampshire, picked up again by camp staff, driven to camp, figuring it all out. But boy, some of my most incredible friends today, I met at camp that first summer. And, I've got other friends from other years of camp as well that I still stay in contact with. But that camp changed my life for a couple reasons. Once again, Jolly Corley was this incredible leader. And not only was she a leader, she trained us to be incredible leaders. We were not just some camp counselors. We were leaders, and she taught us how to be that, but she expected us to act in that manner while having fun in this beautiful location with these incredible couple hundred of kids. And I would never take back the opportunities that I had out at Camp Robindel in New Hampshire. 4 summers, my first year of teaching, or right before I got my first teaching job, and the next 3 summers I was able to spend out there with incredible human beings, again, sharpening my leadership skills. By the end, I became the assistant program director, and I was running programming for 300 kids, almost 300 kids at a all summer camp. It was just an incredible opportunity. I won't spend too much more on that, but we should do a whole episode on Camp Robindel and things I learned and how I grew through that opportunity. While at camp, I got a phone call from the principal at the school that I then worked for asking me to come out and interview. It just so happened my best friend at the time was getting married, and the principal calling to interview me, wanted to interview me on the Friday before. I flew in on Friday morning, drove straight to the interview, had my interview, and drove straight to, I actually missed the rehearsal dinner because the interview ran long, but then was able to celebrate with my best friend getting married that weekend, and then went straight back out to camp. But I was able to secure a teaching position, and guess what? I got to teach World War II history that first year. As I mentioned, I was able to meet Henry Ortelt. I forgot to tell this story. Oh, here's another link. I'm just going to rewind and insert it previously. In a podcast, I could probably edit this to have it seem seamless, but welcome to my brain. When I met Henry Ortelt, that was in 2003. And I met him at a workshop that I signed up for because I knew I loved World War II history. And so I signed up for this workshop. It was in Faribault, Minnesota. I was a sophomore or a junior in college at the time. And I really wanted to go learn about how to teach about the Holocaust and how to teach about World War II. So I took this workshop, and at this workshop, not only was Henry there, but also Core was there. I'm struggling on his last name right now. It'll come to me. And Core was a gentleman who also survived the Holocaust, who created educational tours for people to go to Europe and see and learn through experience different things about the Holocaust and about Western Europe. And Core said, "Oh, you should come on our history tour. It's this summer." And there was no way I could afford that as a broke college student. And I had told him that, it'd be so amazing, but I just do not have the money to go on a 2.5-week trip to Europe. I'm so sorry. Well, I clearly made an impression on Core because 6 months later, he called me and said, "Anne, I know you were interested, and I'm wondering if you want to come on this trip, and I will cut the price in half." And I said, "Oh, that's so kind of you, Core. I would love to go. I really want this experience, but I just do not have the money." Right now, it was $1,800. And he says, "Okay, well, could you do $300 a month for the next 6 months? I'm willing to make a payment plan with you. If you're willing to pay me back $300 a month, I'm going to go get you a flight right now. I'm going to put you on our itinerary right now." And $300 a month, and I know some of you are like, "Oh yeah, that's doable." Okay, college student in 2004. Not easy. While getting ready to student teach and build up money to get me through 6 months without salary, right? Or without any money coming in. And I said, "I'm going to do it. I don't know if I can afford this, but I'm going to do it." And I did, and I was able to make those payments. I had to work a little bit extra and do a couple other things in order to have the funds to do that. But let me tell you, that experience, going with, are you ready for this? This is my favorite part of the story. The travel group I went with was a bunch of retired individuals. I was the youngest person there, other than one couple, which I'll tell you about in a second. I was the youngest person there by 40 years. Maybe 45. I was only 20 years old. So yeah, these were a bunch of 60-plus-year-olds. And then Anne. Now, there was a mother-daughter couple. The two of them were there on the tour as well. And I'm so grateful that they were there too. I had such a blast. It was really cool interacting with all these people who were not the same age as me. Think about all of the learning and the perspective you can soak up being around people who are not within your generation. And I had so much fun. Trip of a lifetime. Like I said, 20 years old, learning about the Holocaust in Europe, traveling to a camp, traveling to the basement of houses where people hid Jewish people. Oh, it was just an incredible experience, but also such a learning experience, like I said, with the group that I traveled with. So definitely set me up again to know I was on the right path and going and learning about what I wanted to teach about and just becoming more and more passionate about history by experiencing it in such a different way. So I get hired as a teacher in 2005. I am 21 years old when I get hired. I turn 22 in August and I start teaching in September. So I was very young. That experience in itself had its ups and downs, its pros and cons of being 22 your first year of teaching. But I truly fell in love with the profession and was excited to finally step into that purpose that I knew I had since age 5. I'm going to tell you about a couple more people. Deb Disted, my mentor, she was one of the other social studies teachers, and she took me not only under her wing. I'm going to give you like a loon analogy. So loons not only help their babies, their chicks, how to swim, but they carry them on their backs for a little while when they can't continue swimming on the lake. You know, so it's difficult for them, and they swoop them on up onto their backs. And I really feel like that was what Deb did. She let me bob underwater a few times to learn my lesson, and really taught me how to swim. But she carried me a few times through a few not great situations my first year, but she also just really allowed me to grow and learn through mistakes. She was there to listen, but then she was there to say, okay, what are we going to do about it? And if you go through any of my culture coaching or my culture training, you'll find that there is a place to share openly about what you're experiencing, but there's also a place to then pause, reflect, and make change. And she really taught me how to do that with such grace. I went into her classroom for years, not just my first year, in tears, emotionally connected to my problems and emotionally, connected to what people thought of me. And she was just there to support me and help me grow. And she still mentors me to this day, almost 20 years later. So grateful for her. I think if I didn't have a mentor like her that first year, I would have left that district. I would have maybe even left education. She just really taught me how to roll through some punches with grace and dignity and just continue to build respect. And I feel that is in my trainings today, worked in a way that really helps my clients and my audience members feel that and see that and get empowered by it. Once I became a teacher, now my chain links are not adults. They are students. I am finding myself getting choked up a little bit right now because I wish that my ego did not get in my way of telling certain students how much they helped me in my career and what perspective they helped me see. I put my foot in my mouth often, again, thinking I knew it all. And I had a couple students who put me in my place in the best way, challenging what I was saying and helping me understand a new perspective or helping me understand their perspective. I taught with a lot of Native American students, and I'm so grateful that a few of them were raised to challenge the status quo and did it in a way that was powerful and impactful. And I did not grow in my teaching on my own. I grew as a teacher and as a human being because of my students helping me see things or say things differently. I had to apologize many times because I didn't understand something. And sometimes they showed me or told me in ways that were not respectful, but the message hit. And the meaning behind what they were saying really hit. and we were able to have incredible relationships, and they were my teachers. And I get sad that, in the moment, I didn't always recognize that. But in the end, I recognize it so much that there were some students who really changed how I taught, how I spoke, activities I had them do, because they were brave enough to call me out or brave enough to have a conversation and ask questions. And if you have people challenging you and why you do something, set the sword down and say, what are they trying to tell me and how can I grow from this? Because I could have gotten very defensive. I maybe did in my early years get very defensive of what my students were saying to me, but I learned so much from them. And I think some of you can really learn from the people around you who might be pointing out some of your shortfalls. And maybe they're not doing it in the most respectful way, but taking time out and reflecting on what they're saying could really benefit you and and change your actions to really grow in your own learning. So I highly recommend you take a time out and think about things that people are saying. It might be your spouse, might be your kids, might be your coworkers. What are some of the things they're saying that maybe are hurtful to you, but can you reflect on it in a healthy way to see if there's a better way for you to move forward? I think that's always important. Following my teaching career, it really now shifts to the decisions I made to make a change in my life. And yeah, there were people who impacted me, but the impact came out clearly when I took action. And so the last part of my chain that got me along to the business that I own now is really me stepping into learning. I started reading professional development books. If you go back to episode 5, the birthday episode, I talk a lot about this. I had to make a change. I had to change what I believed, what I was reading, what I was taking in, who I was surrounding myself with, who I was getting on the phone with and talking to for hours when I went on my late night walks. That really had to switch because some of the conversations were really negative, and I needed to have positive things fueling me up so I could make changes in my life to set myself up for success. And then there was the moment going all in. I could recognize this chain that I just described to you. I could recognize different areas and different experiences of my life that really shifted my thinking. And then I decided, what if I took all the things I learned, all those shifts in mindset, and I put it into content and material that people could consume so that hopefully they could have a similar shift. I knew what I needed, and that's what they say in business. What did you need that you didn't have that you could go create for others who are at that area of their lives? And so the content that I speak on in this podcast and the content that I put out there is really for that person who feels stuck, that person who feels like the victim of their coworkers' attitudes. It's for the person who wants to step up in leadership but is scared to do so because they don't know if they should or they don't know if they'll be accepted. I think that was me for a while as well. And so the impact to influence content that you consume through this podcast, or if you see my stuff on Instagram, it's really geared towards what I needed when I was in my teaching career or when I got out and I heard from people I was working with that they were really suffering from these same things that I had already suffered through. And so that is when I really got in alignment with what I wanted to do. I wanted to help other people get unstuck, believe in themselves, create an environment where other people can thrive, and then literally support them as they started thriving in their work or in their home or in their relationships. What are your chain links? Think back to experiences you had that built on each other. Think about people in your life who guided you, maybe built you up, maybe told you how good you were at something. Think about your skills. Think about things that bring you joy. I really want to encourage you, if you are feeling stuck or just purposeless, right? You're not really sure why you're doing what you're doing. Maybe you feel a lack of energy in the morning and you're just not excited to go do what you need to do. You may be missing that passion and that purpose. And I want you to try to go find it. Get out a journal, write down these threads, these experiences, and these skills, and these people, and see where it all lines up. And what if it works? What if you take the time to really utilize this exercise and you find a single thread that you've been avoiding or that you have just not been confident to step into? I had a friend text me literally 3 hours ago who said, "Anne, I am getting in my own way." And I recognize it. And I had told her, "Hey, get out of the way, girl." And gave her an exercise to do, which was taking one small, tiny action, kind of like proving to your brain that you're not stuck, that you can take this one small, tiny action to gain momentum. And that might be where you're at. Maybe you don't have the opportunity to just drop everything and walk into this new lifestyle with purpose and passion, but you can always take one small step today and start building that momentum, getting you closer to the passion and the purpose that you know you were put on this earth to do. And you'll know that because you'll be such in alignment. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it, and I hope that you take time to reflect on those chain links and where it is leading you. I want to hear that you are out creating change because you have found that passion and that purpose. If you are feeling compelled, please drop a review on your podcast platform. That allows more listeners to hear and get connected to this content. And as always, if you have any topics you think would be a great fit for the What If It Works podcast, send them over to me on Instagram at AnnVote or on email, impact@annvote.com. Go and make it a great week, and we'll be back here next week.